They told me not to show up. Said I'd embarrass the family, that there was no room for a failure at the reunion. So I didn't argue. I just made sure the reunion happened inside the hotel I owned. And when they walked through the front doors and saw my name carved in gold above the lobby, let's just say the silence was louder than any apology. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's about rising when no one claps for you, and how sometimes you don't need to prove anything until they walk straight into your success. The message lit up her phone just as the rain began to fall outside the 40th floor window. Hail Family Reunion, this Saturday at the Lorne Grand Hotel. Please don't come. We don't need more reminders of failure this year. Madison Hale sat motionless, her fingers hovering above the screen. Outside Manhattan pulsed with golden light. Inside her corner office was quiet, lined in dark walnut panels and soft leather chairs. Every inch of it a symbol of the empire she'd built brick by invisible brick. She blinked once slowly. The Lorne Grand Hotel. Her hotel. Of course. 10 years ago, a message like that would have broken her. Back when she was folding towels in a linen closet on the night shift, scraping tips from her shift to afford textbooks she'd never finish. Back when the word failure was something she wore like a name tag pinned over her heart. Now it made her smile. Not a smug smile. Not cruel, just amused, like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. Another message followed. Your cousin is bringing his fiancé and some colleagues. Let's keep things classy. No old uniforms this time. Madison let out a soft breath and leaned back into her chair, the skyline reflecting in her eyes. Her fingers grazed the edge of a bronze nameplate on her desk. Madison Hale, CEO, Hale Hospitality Group. The irony never failed. Her family prestigious, polished, priding themselves on generations of doctors, lawyers, and Ivy League alumni, had made it clear years ago, if you walk away from medicine, you walk away from us. And so she had. At 24, fresh out of med school's third year, she'd handed in her white coat, packed a duffel bag, and moved out without a cent to her name. No plan, no degree, just a stubborn fire and an idea. What if success didn't look like they said it had to? She started cleaning rooms in a rundown motel in Queens. Night shifts, double shifts, the kind of hours that left her knees bruised and her back sore. But she learned. Not just how to fold sheets tight enough to pass inspection, but how bookings worked, how vendors hustled, how a front desk agent could turn a guest complaint into a loyal customer. In 5 years, she had scraped together her first investment loan, a boutique inn on the edge of Soho. 3 years later, she owned 5. By 30, she was negotiating international deals. But her family had never asked. Not once. To them, she was still the dropout who didn't know her place. Madison's assistant, Devin, poked his head into the office. Just confirming you want me to approve the Hale family's group reservation for the Lorne this weekend. She turned, her smile returning. Confirm it, she said. Every suite they requested. Give them the platinum welcome package, too. Flowers, champagne, the whole works. Devin raised an eyebrow. And the billing. We'll discuss that later, Madison said with a shrug. Let them feel like royalty, for now. He paused, then nodded. You got it, boss. When he left, Madison stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, crossing her arms. Far below, taxis crawled like fireflies, and the glow of the Lorne's rooftop sign shimmered in gold against the rainy glass. They had no idea. They didn't know that the hotel they'd chosen, the Lorne Grand, was hers. Acquired 3 years ago in a quiet $140 million deal folded seamlessly into the Hale Hospitality portfolio. She had kept the branding classic, left the signage untouched. Even the staff wasn't told who the owner was. Madison liked her silence. She liked watching the world underestimate her, because she knew what was coming next. In her mind, she saw it play out: Aunt Vivian in pearls adjusting her designer scarf at the check-in desk, her cousin Blake snapping at a receptionist over check-in times, her father standing stiff in the lobby, eyes scanning for signs of imperfection. And all of them walking through her doors under her name carved into the foundation stone they wouldn't even notice. Until it was time. She picked up her phone and typed a single message to the only family member who'd never turned away from her, her younger brother, Jamie. They booked the Lorne. Guess who's hosting the reunion? His reply came within seconds. You serious? Please tell me you're going to say something. Not yet, she wrote. But I will, when it counts. She slid the phone into her desk drawer and closed it with a soft click. Let them come. Let them eat toast, pose for photos in front of gold-framed mirrors. Let them enjoy the hotel that no real Hale would ever work in. Because soon, they'd realize the truth. And when that moment came, she wouldn't need to raise her voice. She'd just need to stand there calm, composed, and exactly where she was meant to be. 9 years earlier, Madison Hale had stood in her father's study, holding a duffel bag and a decision. You're throwing away your future, he snapped, not looking up from his medical journal. You mean your future? She replied softly. He rose slowly the same way he had in the operating room, controlled precise. If you leave that program, you don't come back here. Not for holidays, not for anything. I know, she said. And she left. There was no tearful goodbye, no mother pleading at the door. Just silence and the slow echoing click of the door behind her. She took a bus across the city to a neighborhood she had only ever seen through a windshield, with $312 in her bank account and a knot in her stomach that wouldn't unwind for months. She rented a room from an old woman who didn't ask questions and took a job as a housekeeping assistant at the Royal Pines Motel, 3 stars on paper, but barely 2 in real life. Her first uniform was 2 sizes too big and smelled faintly of bleach. Her first shift started at 6 a.m. Her first guest complaint came by 6:15. She worked 6 days a week double on weekends, rotating between laundry turn-down service and trash runs. Some nights she cleaned vomit off bathroom tiles. Other nights she cried in the mop closet. She wasn't special, she was invisible. That's what made her dangerous. While others survived each shift, Madison studied it. She watched how front desk clerks handled upset customers. She noticed which maids got the best tips and why. She took mental notes on supply chain problems, towel inventories, what soaps got stolen most. Every mistake she made, she documented. Every rude guest she remembered. But there were moments of light, too. Every Thursday night around 9:30 p.m., her younger brother, Jamie, would wait in the alley behind the motel, tucked under a flickering street lamp, with a Tupperware container of warm food. He never said much, just handed her the meal and sat with her on the curb in silence. Sometimes when her shift ran late, he'd leave a Post-it note inside the lid. You're not crazy, you're just early. She hadn't told him everything, not then, but he knew enough. Enough to help her apply quietly, secretly, to a local business college, offering evening classes in hospitality management. He even paid her application fee behind her back. Her acceptance letter came the same week she was promoted to assistant night manager. That was the turning point. 3 years later, Madison walked into a city auction and placed the winning bid on a bankrupt inn off the edge of Soho. It was tiny 12 rooms, cracked tile water stains on the ceilings, but it was hers. The SBA loan had been a gamble co-signed by a retired guest she had once helped during a power outage. She renamed the inn the Hazel after her grandmother. Within 2 years, it had a wait list 6 months long and was ranked in the top 10 boutique hotels in Manhattan. By 30, Madison had opened her third property. By 32, she had signed a multi-million-dollar partnership with a European hospitality group. And still, her parents said nothing. No congratulations, no apology, not even a curiosity call. The silence was almost comical now. They hadn't just missed her milestones, they'd refused to see the work behind them, the 3 a.m. room. Flips, the night shifts, the weekends alone, the loans, the rejections, the cold dinners, the late-night panic attacks in storage closets. They only remembered one thing. She quit med school. That's what made her a failure in their eyes. But Jamie knew better. He was there for the all-nighters before opening day. The plumbing disaster. The night a health inspector gave her 48 hours to meet code compliance, and she regrouted an entire bathroom floor herself. He knew that when Madison said she built this, she meant built it with her own 2 hands, her own tears, her own debts. Now, She stood at the top of a hospitality group that spanned 2 continents and over a dozen properties, and her family still thought she was just the girl who once cleaned rooms. They never asked where the girl went. They didn't realize that she never left. She just built something they couldn't see. Until now. Madison Hale had made peace with the silence. She stopped waiting for the phone calls, the invitations, the "we're proud of you" that never came. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, or graduation that passed without her name on the list, she added another invisible brick to the wall between them. What hurt most wasn't their anger. It was their apathy. They simply erased her. In the group chats, she was a ghost. Aunt Cora once joked, during a family Zoom call, that at least no one in this family ever had to resort to manual labor. Her mother didn't correct her. Blake, her cousin, laughed. They knew what she did for a living, or thought they did. Hotel maid. That's the word that got whispered when her name came up, as if cleaning rooms to survive after walking away from med school was some irreversible moral failure. They never asked what happened after. They didn't know about the boutique inn she turned into a top-ranked destination. They didn't know about the corporate group she quietly formed or the international investors who sought her out by name. They didn't know that she now employed over 500 people across 17 properties in 3 countries. They never asked. And she never told them, not because she was ashamed, but because they never earned the right to know. They weren't there when she lived on instant noodles and fear. They weren't there when she signed her first loan handshaking. They weren't there when the bank almost pulled out and she personally drove across state lines to secure new capital in 36 hours. No, they weren't there. But Jamie was. He knew. So did Devin, her assistant of 6 years, who now stood in her office doorway holding a fresh stack of documents and a brow arched with curiosity. They've confirmed the full ballroom, he said, and requested a string quartet for the cocktail hour. Also, get this, they want gold-accented dessert forks, because apparently standard silver feels cheap. Madison smirked. That tracks, she said, turning a page in her planner. Devin paused, then asked the question he'd been holding in for weeks. Do you want to say something this time? Madison looked up. He clarified. To them. To your family. Do you want to show them who owns the building they're so proud to party in? She leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs, thoughtful. No, she said finally, her voice low but steady. Not yet. Devin tilted his head. You're just going to let them walk in here and act like they belong. They've done that all their lives, she replied. But this time, they'll walk into my world, and they'll feel it. Maybe not at first, but they will. Devin smiled. He had seen that look before. Not one of vengeance, but precision. Like a chef plating the final garnish on a dish that had taken years to prepare. Outside the office window, the sun was beginning to set, painting Manhattan in hues of copper and peach. The spire of the Lorne. Grand cast a long shadow across the neighboring rooftops. That spire had once loomed over Madison like a monument to a life she could never reach. Now it bore her name, Hale Hospitality Group, in brass letters etched at the base. She walked toward the window and stared at the building across the street. They were coming in 3 days. Her mother, her father, Blake, Aunt Cora. The whole curated chaos of the Hale clan, dressed in their finest, ready to toast champagne and take selfies against marble pillars and velvet walls, never knowing the girl they mocked, now owned every inch of it. They never asked if she was doing okay, never asked if she had enough to eat, never asked why she really left school, never asked if maybe, just maybe, they were wrong. And so Madison had stopped offering answers. She didn't need validation, not anymore. What she had now was clarity and keys, 17 properties, 1,000 booked nights, a skyline that remembered the girl in the oversized housekeeping uniform. Her phone buzzed again. Mom reminder, wear something formal, no uniforms. We want to look elegant. Madison didn't reply. She simply walked to her closet, reached into the far back corner, and pulled out the one thing her mother feared most, the old uniform cleaned, pressed, and folded. Soon, she thought. Soon they'll know. The text message came at midnight. Just heard you're attending the reunion. I hope you're not still working there. You deserve better, Madison. It's time to grow up and come home. No, I'm sorry. No. We were wrong. just polished concern dressed in superiority. Madison stared at the glowing screen in her darkened penthouse, the words casting a colder light than the city outside. She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her favorites list and tapped Jamie's name. He picked up immediately. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, groggy but alert. "I'm ready," she said. "I need you to bring the camera. The good one. Record everything, every entrance, every eye roll, every gasp. Multiple angles." Jamie whistled softly. "So, we're really doing this?" "We're not doing revenge," she said. "We're doing reality. Unfiltered." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll bring extra batteries." The next morning she met with James, her head of security. They sat in the command room. 2 floors above the ballroom screens lined the walls, all connected to the hotel's interior and exterior cameras. "I want the entire Hale family's reservations canceled," she said. James didn't flinch. "All of them. Yes. No suite upgrades, no early check-ins, no do you know who I am exceptions." James grinned. "I live for this part." "And the ballroom," she added, pulling a folder from her bag. "I've made some changes." She passed him a sketch. A darkened room with no decor. No tables, no linens, just a single spotlight shining down on a single chair in the center of the space. Minimal, stark, unignorable. James raised his eyebrows. "You're staging a courtroom," No, Madison said. "I'm giving them a mirror." In the days leading up to the reunion, Madison moved with quiet efficiency. Every detail mattered. She personally approved the ballroom setup. Black draped, soundless carpet, the spotlight positioned to fall like judgment. No music, no hors d'oeuvres, just the silence of consequence. She had the old housekeeping uniform dry cleaned and pressed. The name tag Madison in block letters was still attached, a little scratched, but intact. She hung it in her office closet, next to a row of tailored blazers and silk blouses. Devin walked in as she adjusted the hanger. "You're really going to wear that?" She looked at the uniform like it was armor. "I wore this the first time they told me I was embarrassing. Now I wear it because I'm unbreakable." Devin smiled. "They won't see it coming." "They never do," she said. "That's the point." She received another message the night before the reunion. "Mom, your father is worried you'll make things uncomfortable tomorrow. Let's not cause another scene. That hotel may be your job, but it's not who you are." Madison read it 3 times, each sentence a fresh reminder that they still didn't get it. To them, this hotel was a stepping stone, a detour, something she should grow out of. To her, it was the cathedral of her own making. She closed the message without replying. She no longer craved their understanding. She'd outgrown the need to be heard by people who had never listened. The day before the event, she did a final walkthrough of the ballroom. James and his team ran audio checks, tested lighting transitions, and reviewed the guest routing plan. After check-in, James said, "We'll guide the family straight through the main lobby. No distractions, right into the ballroom." "Perfect," Madison replied. "Let them walk straight into it." She touched the chair under the spotlight. It was a simple wooden seat, no cushion. She'd chosen it intentionally uncomfortable, ordinary, real. Like the chair she used to sit in after 12-hour shifts, back when her knees ached, and her heart felt heavier than her mop bucket. Jamie joined her as she stood in the center of the room. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. "I'm not doing it for them," she said. "I'm doing it for the girl who used to cry in the supply closet and still got up the next day." Jamie nodded. "I'll be behind the curtains. When the moment comes, just give me a glance. I'll roll everything." That night, Madison sat in her suite staring at the skyline as the Lorne Grand glowed in the dark, like a crown of her own making. She didn't feel nervous. She felt resolved. Tomorrow wasn't about spectacle. It was about recognition, not from them, but from herself. She reached for the old uniform one more time, smoothing the sleeves and buttoning the collar halfway. Then she set it aside on a chair near the bed, clean, pressed, ready, just like she was. Saturday arrived with the kind of sky that made New York feel cinematic, clear gold lit, and full of promise. Madison was already dressed. Not in her usual navy power suit, not in heels, but in her old pressed housekeeping uniform. Soft-soled shoes, name tag intact, The sleeves still bore the faintest traces of bleach from a decade ago, but they were clean, crisp, intentional. She stood in her penthouse a level above the chaos to come watching the check-in desk via the live feed. It began right on schedule. At 10:47 a.m., the Hale family began to arrive in waves, each more extravagant than the last. Madison's mother was the first pearls, a wide-brimmed hat, and a designer handbag she could never have afforded without her friend Margot's revolving credit card. Behind her came Aunt Cora and Uncle Don, trailed by their son Blake, his fiancé, clutching a bouquet of white calla lilies as though expecting a proposal mid-brunch. The air of entitlement was so thick it fogged the revolving doors. At 10:55 a.m., Madison's father walked in, posture stiff, lips pinched. He stopped to straighten a stack of guest brochures, scanning the room, as if to judge its worthiness for his last name. The lobby of the Lorne Grand sparkled under natural light, white marble floors, gleaming gold accents, tasteful and modern, and yet for all their presence the Hale family looked miscast. She didn't need to hear them to know what they were saying. "Do you know who I am?" "We requested early access to the penthouse suite." "Where's the manager?" Madison sipped her tea and turned up the volume on the security feed. The front desk team was ready. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Hale," one of the concierges said with professional calm. "Unfortunately, we've been notified that your reservation has been canceled." Cora's shrill voice cut through like a blade. "That's impossible. We paid for the platinum package. The reunion is here. Get the manager now." A younger employee leaned forward with quiet confidence. "The owner will be making a personal appearance at the welcome event. Everything will be addressed then." Madison smiled. It was almost too perfect. Aunt Cora swelled like a balloon on the verge of popping. "You listen here, this is unacceptable. I want the general manager. No, I want the owner." In the security room 2 floors up, James grinned, watching the same feed. "Your aunt's blood pressure must be spiking." Madison didn't answer. She just watched. Her father stepped up to the counter now. He said nothing at first, just stared down the concierge like an attending surgeon evaluating a third-year med student. Then, "We are not here to be played with." The employee held his ground. "No one is playing, sir. You're welcome to enjoy the hotel's amenities until the event begins. The owner will speak to all guests personally." The irony was breathtaking. There they were, huffing, posturing, flipping through phones to find confirmation emails, complaining about imaginary Yelp reviews they would leave, and none of them realized whose hospitality they were standing in. They still thought Madison was somewhere in the back fluffing pillows. "Should I dispatch a senior manager just to rile them up?" James offered. "No," Madison said calmly, her eyes still locked on the screen. "Let them sweat. The ballroom is ready." James nodded. "Spotlight on chair in place. Your folder is there too." "Good." Madison turned from the monitor and walked toward the elevator. Each step felt deliberate, steady, like descending into the past 1 floor at a time. In the ballroom, staff were guiding the family members to the designated space for the private welcome reception. The guests had expected chandeliers, hors d'oeuvres, and a string quartet. What they got was a cavernous, nearly dark room. 1 chair, 1 beam of light, the rest left in shadow. Blake muttered something crude as he walked in. "Are we being punked?" His fiancée shivered in her strapless dress. "It's freezing in here." "Where are the mimosas? Where are the damn tables?" Cora barked. Madison watched them from behind a blackout curtain lining the far wall. Jamie stood beside her camera, ready. His fingers hovered over the record button. He looked at her for the signal. Madison inhaled deeply, held it, released. "Not yet," she whispered. "Let them soak in their discomfort. Let them look around and feel the space, the awkwardness, the absence of control." She wasn't rushing this. She wasn't here to humiliate. She was here to reframe, to take the same mirror they once held to her and turn it around. And when the moment came, when every last one of them had filled that room expecting luxury and found only a spotlight, she would step into the light. And they would see her. Not the maid, not the failure, but the owner of everything they assumed was above her. The ballroom was silent, cold, and dim. Gone were the lavish decorations the Hale family had imagined. No floral centerpieces, no glittering buffet tables, no musicians tuning up in the corner. Instead, there was only one thing waiting for them: a single wooden chair, under a single spotlight in the middle of a cavernous space. The rest of the room was cloaked in shadow. For a few moments, no one moved. The family huddled at the doorway, murmuring to one another with growing confusion. "I don't understand," said Blake's fiancée, her heels clicking as she stepped forward. "Where is everyone? There must be a mistake," Aunt Cora huffed. "This isn't the reception hall. This looks like a basement." A low, smooth voice echoed from hidden speakers above. "The owner of the hotel welcomes you all. One by one, please step into the light." The words fell like an invitation and a warning. "What kind of joke is this?" Uncle Don snapped. "We paid for a premium package." Madison watched from behind the blackout curtain on the far wall. She stood tall, her old uniform neat, and pressed her hair pulled back the way she used to wear it during overnight cleaning shifts. In her hands, she held a thick folder, each page inside a relic of their past cruelty. Texts, emails, screenshots, dismissals. Jamie stood behind the camera, red light blinking. She waited until the room had grown tense with discomfort. The uncertainty was a fog thick visible. Their authority was cracking. Then slowly she stepped into the light. The reveal was quiet. Her shoes made soft sounds on the floor as she walked toward the chair, not hurried, not hesitant, just steady. One by one, the heads turned. Her mother's hand flew to her chest. Her father's mouth opened, closed, then stayed shut. No one spoke. Madison paused in the center of the room beneath the beam of white light. She looked at each of them, not with anger, but clarity. Then she spoke. "Welcome to the Lorne Grand. You're standing in the ballroom of the hotel you told me I wasn't good enough to clean." No one moved. "The hotel you thought was beneath me is now built on everything you stepped over." A ripple passed through the crowd, recognition colliding with shame. Madison opened the folder and let the pages fall like leaves into her hands. "I thought I'd begin with a few family favorites," she said, voice calm, level. "Shall we?" She read the first one aloud. "She's always been a disappointment. Honestly, what kind of woman cleans rooms for a living, Aunt Cora?" She flipped the page. "Don't let her near the holiday table. It's too awkward having her there while the rest of us talk about our careers. Her cousin Blake another. We just want a family we can be proud of. She chose this path. Don't let her ruin the photos." Her mother. The room was still. Silent. No defense. No one even tried. Madison lowered the papers slowly. "You said I embarrassed the family, that I shamed your name, that I was a stain on your image, but I didn't ruin your reputation. I survived the one you gave me." Her father finally spoke, his voice strained. "Madison, what is all this? You're the manager here?" She looked him in the eyes. "I'm the owner." The words landed like thunder in the hush. Her voice didn't rise, but the power behind it was unmistakable. "I own this hotel, and 16 others across 3 countries. I employ more people than this entire family has ever cared to know. And not once did any of you ask how I was doing." Her mother stepped forward. "We didn't know. You never told us." Madison tilted her head. "Would you have listened?" No one answered. She took one more step forward and laid the folder on the chair. "You don't owe me an apology. I'm not here for that. I'm here to remind you of the truth, that you were wrong. That you wrote me off because I didn't fit your version of success. That you thought I wore shame when I wore this uniform." She ran her hand lightly across the name tag. "But this isn't shame. This is proof. That I know what real work looks like. That I know what resilience feels like. That I built an empire in the time you spent pretending I didn't exist." Jamie's camera whirred quietly behind her. No one in the room seemed to notice it now. All eyes were on Madison. "I could have stopped you at the door. I could have denied your bookings. But I wanted you to see it, to feel it, to understand the weight of what you missed while you looked away." She gave them a moment. Let them sit with it. Then she turned slowly and walked out of the spotlight, leaving them where they had once left her, in the dark. The silence after Madison exited the spotlight was deeper than before. No one spoke. No one followed. They simply stood there, family members frozen in an ornate ballroom designed to remind them what they had overlooked. She didn't turn back. Outside the room, in the adjacent control hallway, James was already waiting. He handed her a warm towel and a bottle of water. "You sure you're ready for the next part?" he asked. Madison didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." She took a deep breath, adjusted her collar, and gave the command. "Escort them out. All of them." James nodded, a signal passing down through his earpiece. Within seconds, discreet security personnel entered the ballroom. They weren't aggressive, just efficient, trained in the subtle art of guiding the uninvited toward the door. "Excuse me, ma'am," one said to Cora, who still stood clutching her pearls, eyes wide in disbelief. "The owner has canceled the event. We'll need to escort you and your party from the premises." "You can't be serious," Cora gasped. "We booked this ballroom." "We paid no," Madison said, stepping back into view. Her voice calm, but absolute. "You booked it under the assumption that you were welcome." That assumption was incorrect. Her father's jaw tensed. "You're humiliating your own family." "No," she corrected. "Walking slowly across the polished floor, I'm holding them accountable. There's a difference." She turned slightly toward the group, hands folded in front of her. The pressed lines of her uniform still sharp under the chandeliers. The Hale Group does not host events for people who belittle service workers, and it certainly doesn't serve champagne to guests who've spent years stepping over their own blood. Her mother started to say something, an apology maybe, but Madison raised a hand. "No more words. Not tonight." She glanced at James. "Go ahead." Each family member was handed a crisp white envelope sealed with gold-foiled edges and embossed with the Hale Hospitality logo. Inside, a full invoice, not just for the champagne they thought was complimentary, but for every requested suite, every add-on service, the extra staffing for the platinum package, the specialty linens ordered last minute, even the valet services they never tipped for, the total just over $2,400 to $900. No one could speak. Blake opened his envelope and went pale. His fiancée made a choked sound and looked at her heels like she might throw up into them. "I expect payment in full within 10 business days," Madison said, her voice as even as ever. "We'll also be adding a 20% gratuity for the staff you disrespected." Her father stepped forward, again his voice quieter now. "Madison, come on. This isn't who you are." But she just smiled, tired but certain. "This is exactly who I am. You just never bothered to find out." Security began guiding them toward the exit. There were no screams now, no threats. Only the quiet shuffle of expensive shoes on polished floors, and just like that, the Hale family was gone. The ballroom was empty, except for Madison and Jamie. He stepped out from the shadows near the curtain camera still hanging from his neck. His eyes were red, glassy, with emotion he hadn't let show while recording. For a long moment he just looked at her. Then he rushed forward and wrapped his arms around her. "I was waiting for the moment," they realized, he whispered, voice cracking, "but the truth is, they never did." He pulled back, eyes shining. "They didn't recognize you, but I always have." Madison's breath caught in her throat. Of all the things said that day, of all the truths laid bare, that was the one that broke her. "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm still standing." Jamie smiled and wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. "You think they'll pay the invoice?" "Oh, they'll pay," Madison replied, "one way or another." Later that evening, back in her office, Madison slipped out of the uniform and hung it carefully back in her closet. It wasn't just fabric, it was memory, it was proof. On her desk sat the unopened envelope from her father, a handwritten note sent weeks earlier, postmarked the day after the family received their invitations. She didn't open it. Instead, she pulled a fresh piece of hotel stationery from the drawer and wrote to whom it may concern. "This establishment proudly serves those who value kindness over pedigree, effort over entitlement, and respect over bloodline. For the rest, we wish you well somewhere else." She slid the note into a clean envelope, stamped it, and left it on the front desk for the next Hale who might come calling. The next morning, Madison Hale sat by the tall windows of her penthouse office, watching New York wake up beneath her. Traffic moved in slow rhythm below. The sky above was pale gold. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Every major business outlet had picked up the story by now. From housekeeping to hospitality tycoon, a masterclass in humility and power. Hotel CEO teaches entitled guests a lesson. Turns out, they were her family. The uniform they mocked became her armor. Some headlines were dramatic, others poetic. But all of them carried the same message: she'd risen without their permission, and she'd never needed it. Devin walked in, tablet in hand, eyebrows raised in amusement. CNN wants an interview, he said. So does Forbes. And we've had over 2,000 applications from people who said they used to work in service roles. Madison smiled faintly. Let them through, every one of them. This company was built by the overlooked. Devin hesitated, then added, and something came for you. By hand delivery. He set a cream envelope on her desk, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Her father's. The script was neat, formal, the kind of handwriting you learned in prep school and never unlearned. She stared at it for a long time. Then, without opening it, she slid it into the drawer on her left. No ceremony, no bitterness. It sat beside a folded napkin Jamie had once written on when she was 26 and broke and scared. You are not your setbacks. You are the fight that comes after. She closed the drawer gently. Some things didn't need to be read. Some stories didn't need to be reopened. That afternoon, a new envelope arrived, this one from a courier in a charcoal gray suit. Madison recognized the seal before he even spoke. Delacqua Hale & Partners, LLP, the family law firm, the crown jewel of her father's legacy. Inside was a formal letter. Dear Madison, we would like to extend a partnership invitation. We believe your voice and experience would add immeasurable value to the firm's modern rebranding efforts. She didn't read the rest. She didn't need to. Instead, she stood, walked across the office to a small wardrobe cabinet, and pulled out the old housekeeping uniform once more. The same one she'd worn the day they looked through her. The same one she wore when she made them look again. She folded it neatly, placed the name tag on top, Madison in scratch plastic, and slid both into a padded envelope. She added a note in her own handwriting. No thanks. I prefer to own the building. She sealed it, handed it to Devin, and smiled. Send it to their office. No rush. Let them feel the weight of it. Devin took the envelope like it was glass. Consider it delivered. That evening, Madison walked the halls of the Lorne Grand alone. She didn't do it often anymore, not because she felt too important, but because time had simply shifted. Boardrooms, conferences, flights, strategy meetings. But tonight, she let herself return to the spaces where it all began. The third-floor corridor where she once scrubbed carpets at 2 a.m., the service elevator she used when she wasn't allowed in the front lobby, the storage closet she used to sit in when the world felt too loud. It was all still here, but it no longer held pain. It held proof. As she passed the staff break room, she paused. A young housekeeper sat eating a late lunch earbuds and scrolling through something on her phone. She looked up startled and began to rise. Madison smiled and shook her head. Relax. I just wanted to say thank you for your work today. You're seen. The girl blinked, then nodded. Thank you, ma'am. Not boss, not CEO, just ma'am. But it was said with something Madison hadn't heard from her own family in years, respect. She continued down the hallway, her footsteps quiet against the floor. Outside, the city glowed. Billboards, taxi lights, windows that shimmered like dreams. But here, inside her own empire, Madison Hale finally felt still. She didn't need an apology. She didn't need a seat at their table. She was the table. The conference room on the 12th floor was modest but bright, filled with fresh faces and nervous energy. 20 new hires sat around the long table. Their branded welcome folders neatly stacked, their pens untouched. Most had come from small towns, community colleges, or past jobs where they were rarely seen, let alone celebrated. Madison Hale stood at the head of the table, not in heels or a tailored blazer, but in soft flats and a simple slate gray blouse. She didn't need to dress like a CEO to be one anymore. Welcome, she said, voice warm but direct. "This is the part of your orientation that won't be printed in any handbook." Some looked up with mild confusion. A few smiled. One or two already had their phone's discreet recording, having heard whispers about the founder's legendary opening talk. Madison held up a lanyard, a name tag, scratched plastic, letters faded slightly. Madison, housekeeping, 2011. She placed it gently on the table like a sacred object. "I started at this hotel scrubbing toilets at 2 a.m., she said. "Not this exact one, but one very much like it. My first paycheck barely covered rent. I ate dinner out of vending machines and cried during every second break." The room was still. Eventually, I became the owner of that hotel, and 16 others. She let it sit there, no bravado, just fact. Then she stepped around the table and turned off the overhead lights. With the tap of a remote, a spotlight lit up in the center of the room. A chair beneath it. The same setup as the ballroom that day. "Last month," she continued, "I invited a group of people who once called me a failure to this very hotel. They didn't know I owned it. I let them walk into this spotlight believing they were the guests of honor." She paused. "And then I told them the truth. That the woman they dismissed for cleaning rooms now held the keys to every door they walked through." Mouths fell open. One young man whispered, "That was you." Another woman pressed a hand to her chest. "You don't need to start in the right room," Madison said. "You just need to start." She clicked the remote again. The spotlight faded. The lights came back on. "I don't care what school you came from, how many jobs you've had, or whether anyone else ever believed in you. You're here because I see value in you." She looked around the room, slowly making eye contact with each person. "This company was built on second chances, on people who've been overlooked. You don't need to prove your worth to me. You just need to show up." There was a long pause. Then someone clapped. Another followed. Soon the room was filled with quiet but powerful applause, not for show, but in shared recognition. Madison smiled, then gave them her final words. "Success doesn't wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a name tag and carries keys." That evening, the hotel was quiet. The last guests were checking in, housekeeping was finishing the night turnover, and the city beyond the windows was winding down into evening haze. Madison stood alone in her suite, staring at the old uniform folded neatly on her bed. She hadn't worn it since the day of the reunion, but tonight felt different. She slipped it on with slow, deliberate motions, buttoned each one, adjusted the collar, pinned the name tag to her chest. It didn't feel like going backward. It felt like anchoring herself to the beginning. This wasn't about remembering struggle. It was about honoring the woman who once stood in a supply closet crying quietly, but still came back the next day. She took the service elevator down. The doors opened to the staff hallway, the one she used to mop back when her only goals were to finish her shift and make it to the next rent check. She walked the perimeter of the hotel through the kitchens, the laundry rooms, the dim service corridors where the heartbeat of hospitality truly lived. Staff paused when they saw her. Some looked confused, some smiled. One young man in dish gloves raised an eyebrow. "You doing a throwback tour?" he asked. She chuckled. "Something like that." She passed the ballroom where the spotlight still hung unused now, but preserved. On the wall outside, a small brass plaque had been installed last week. It read, "The room where it was reclaimed, dedicated to every service worker who was ever underestimated." She placed her hand on it gently, then moved on. By the time she returned to her office, the sky had turned lavender blue. She stepped inside, slipped out of the uniform, folded it with care, and placed it in a glass shadow box on the wall. Next to it, she added a typed card. Not a costume, not a disguise. A uniform, a beginning. She stepped back and smiled.